question when that occurs, and I don't think that happened on this occasion.
If that didn't happen, I certainly apologise to the member because I well understand that normal practice. Question number 2, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable David Carter.
Sir, on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition to the Attorney-General, does he agree with the Prime Minister's statement that, and I quote, "there are at least 40 trials and 50 investigations where those investigations currently, the video surveillance equipment's been turned off, and yeah, I don't think that will harm those trials in my view," end quote. And how many of those cases does the prosecution rely on evidence from warrantless filming from private property without the owner's consent?
The Honourable Chris Ferguson.
As to the first part of the question, yes, I agree with the Prime Minister's full statement. As to the second part of the question, the phrase evidence from warrantless filming on private property without the owner's consent could refer to evidence obtained either by so-called over-the-fence filming from private property into a suspect's property or filming carried out on a suspect's private property without a warrant to enter that property. It's highly unlikely that any of the cases mentioned rely on evidence from warrantless filming from private property without the owner's consent.
The Honourable David Parker.
Does the Attorney know why a response was never forthcoming to the written offer made by Labor in November 2010 to facilitate the passage of the Search and Surveillance Bill, which conferred powers, subject to the better protection of press freedoms and tidying up of serious fraud office powers?
The Honourable Chris Ferguson.
Yes, I do, and I've made very detailed inquiries because I was quite hurt by the statement by Mr Chevelle on Morning Report that I was lazy and indifferent. The record, I am a sensitive soul, as Mr Mallard says. The letter was actually sent. The letter was sent to Mr Power. It was copied to Ms Collins and me. It's not customary practice, at least on this side of the House, for those who are sent copies to respond. It was also blind copied to a fellow from the Media Freedom Association, but Mr Parker inadvertently sent us a copy of that reference as well. The reality of the matter is, I say to Mr Parker, that Mr Power did answer the letter and said he'd get back to him.
The Honourable David Parker.
Get back to me.
Order.
A year later.
No, order. Order. The Honourable David Parker, please ask his questions.
To the Attorney, what advice, if any, did he give to his ministerial colleagues about the desirability of progressing the Search and Surveillance Bill, which provides the necessary statutory authority for surveillance, rather than letting it languish on the order paper for 11 months? The
Honourable Chris Ferguson.
Well, my colleague Mr Power has been an excellent Minister of Justice, and we're all going to greatly miss him. There was no, I'm not blaming Simon at all, I'm proud of him. He is a valued friend and parliamentary colleague. The reality of the matter is that until the Supreme Court decision was released, there was no appreciation of the issue of lawfulness having been raised, particularly I say to Mr Chevelle, given 15 years of Court of Appeal jurisprudence which upheld this particular activity.
The Honourable David Parker.
Given the discretion the Court already has to admit illegally obtained evidence in serious cases, will the Attorney undertake that he will interfere with the Supreme Court precedent as little as possible and consider the approach favoured by Labor?
The Honourable Chris Ferguson.
What I can certainly undertake is that what we're doing here is dealing with the issue of lawfulness. Now, admittedly, an earlier draft that was sent to Mr Chevelle and uploaded 5 seconds later on Red Alert did refer to the issue of reasonableness. And so what we're dealing with here is that very limited question of lawfulness. So it's still going to be open. It's still going to be open to people to take objections under Section 30 on the grounds of reasonableness.
Charles Chevelle.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, can the Minister confirm the advice of officials this morning that the consultation draft of his video camera surveillance temporary measures bill has been substantially redrafted in response to reaction to it? And if so, when does he think that he will make a copy available of it so that people can submit intelligently on it at the Select Committee at 9 a.m. tomorrow?
The Honourable Chris Finlayson.
The answer is yes, because last week, in a recess week, quite apart from signing a number of deeds of settlement to advance excellent progress on treaty settlements, I was consulting widely with a number of interest groups, including the Human Rights Commission and the Law Society. As a result of that, I did respond, and I'll talk to the member. I'll talk to the member after question time to facilitate that, provided he gives me an undertaking that he won't upload it onto Red Alert before it's formally tabled in the House tonight.
So much,
Order.
Mr Speaker.
Order. Before I call the member, unless I heard totally incorrectly, the question asked was not an unreasonable question. It did contain an allegation that the bill had been redrafted. It asked when a redrafted version might be available. Now, if there's no redrafted version, that would be helpful for the House to know that. But it was a fair question. This is... it would be reasonable for the House to be told when it might be available. The Honourable Simon Power.
Actually, the Attorney-General, unless I've completely misheard him, said he was happy to meet with the member after question time and go through the issues with him.
Well, I appreciate... No, I don't think I need any help. This is a matter I'm dealing with, and that doesn't help the House in terms of when the bill might be available. It's certainly a generous offer of the Attorney-General, but this is a matter where there's significant public interest, and it would be helpful to the House to know when a bill, if it has been redrafted, it may not have been redrafted, when it might be available.
There were two parts to the supplementary question. I answered the first part fully. I'm not required to answer the second part, but I did say to Mr Chevelle that I'll consult him after question time with a view to making a copy available to him. As I said, my concern is compliance with standing orders and to ensure that that is followed. But I make that... Sit down, I haven't finished.
Order.
I'm quite happy to make that offer.
No, a member does not. A member will actually, the Honourable Chris Finlayson will get to his feet and apologise for that, because he must not use the point of order. He must not use that procedure to attack the member like that. The Honourable Chris Finlayson. I'm dealing with this first matter first. I ask the member to...
Point of order.
Order. I appreciate the member for doing that. Is it a point of order,
Mr. Speaker.
Keith Long?
Mr. Speaker, I think the Attorney-General has not really addressed your point about when the bill will be made available to the House, because there's more than Labor and National in the House, and we want to know, and I think the question would address that, when it will be available to the House.
I presume, and maybe this could be a matter that the Attorney-General, and I apologise for taking the time of the House on this, but it is a matter of public interest. It seems the Attorney-General is indicating that when it's tabled in the House it'll be available, and if there's any departure from that, I should stand corrected, but it would appear that that's when it'll become available to the member. Charles Chevelle, does he have further... Is it point of order? Or
I have a point of order,
Point of order,
sir.
Charles Chevelle.
Sir, and it really relates to the issue that you raised with the Attorney-General. The Select Committee is due to meet, as we understand, at 9 a.m. in the morning. A substantially redrafted bill, we've learnt from the Attorney, now exists. No one's seen that bill, and sir, if you just hear me out, I accept that he answered the first part of my question as he was required to do, but he chose to go on and address the second part. And I think there is a strong public interest, sir, in people knowing, given that they're before a Select Committee at 9 a.m. tomorrow, when they're going to see what they're submitting on.
Well, here, the Honourable Trevor Mallard briefly.
Mr Speaker, I think we run the risk of being tied up in our own rules here, in that I think we are aware that there's a high likelihood of the House taking urgency on this legislation at some stage this afternoon or this evening in order to get it onto the table and off to the Select Committee. Sir, and for that reason it can't be tabled according to our rules. I wonder whether you could, until urgency is taken, I wonder if you could ask the Attorney whether he would be prepared, either through the National Party website or Red Alert, to provide it to the public.
Order. The member knows I can't do that. There was the opportunity, there are further questions can be asked of the Attorney-General what he might be prepared to do. It was just on the basis of that supplementary question I wanted to make sure the issue of whether or not a copy might be made available to members, whether that part of the question could be answered. But the Attorney-General has satisfied that part of the question undoubtedly, and the House should now move on. Charles Chauvel may have a further supplementary. Charles Chauvel.
Yes, thank you, Mr Speaker. Can he confirm the advice of officials this morning that the principal reason for not inserting the relevant safeguard sections from the Search and Surveillance Bill into his Temporary Measures Bill is that the drafting exercise is too complicated to complete in the time available?
The Honourable Chris Finlayson.
Yes, I can. That's my understanding, that the cross-referencing involved would result in a 20-page bill, and I am advised by the officials, including Parliamentary Counsel, who I don't think spoke to Mr Chauvel and Mr Parker this morning, that that is the case.
Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Minister seek in any way to prevent the Select Committee from considering the idea of inserting the relevant safeguard sections of the Search and Surveillance Bill into the Temporary Measures Bill so as to provide a statutory basis for police video surveillance, given that it has been through a proper Select Committee process and has the support of a majority of Members of Parliament?
The Honourable Chris Finlayson.
With respect, I don't think that's a matter for me. I think that's a matter for the committee.
Mr Speaker,
Charles Chauvel.
The Minister will have carriage of the bill, and my question was quite precise. Will he do anything to seek to prevent the Select Committee from considering the issue that I raised?
Order. The Minister in answering said that's a matter for the committee, and that is a reasonable answer. He's indicated he's not going to do anything to interfere with the committee in that regard.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Charles.
I'm not sure that that's an entirely, with respect, accurate summary of the answer, but I wonder if I could raise a question of leave, and that is to seek the leave of the House to table a supplementary order paper that I have drafted, which would insert the relevant provisions of the Search and Seizure Bill into the Temporary Measures Bill, and further to ask the leave of the House that the supplementary order paper be referred to the Justice and Electoral Committee on the same basis as it may refer the Temporary Measures Bill, in light of the Attorney-General's undertaking that he will do nothing to obstruct that process.
Leave is being sought for two purposes here. First, for the tabling of this SOP, draft SOP. Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection to that? There is objection. There is objection. Question number 3, Tim McIndoe.